Hi, hello, welcome. So I recently started the manga series Berserk, and I really wanted to share my experience of starting it and reading it for the first time. I've got a lot I want to say about it, so that's what this video is going to be, just my experience starting out with this manga. So Berserk is a manga series that is technically currently running. It's created by Kentaro Miura, who unfortunately passed away, and I believe is still being continued by people who knew him and worked for him or worked alongside him. I read the first 3 volumes. I have the first deluxe edition, which is volumes 1 through 3, which is the full Black Swordsman arc. I've got a lot I want to discuss. I've got a lot to talk about. The theme of this video is going to kind of be unsureness. I'm not going to be gushing over Berserk, at least not yet, but I'm not going to necessarily rip it apart either. I'm kind of on the fence about how I feel about it so far, but I have some concerns, I have some criticisms, I have some positives, and I'm not going to be doing any sort of plot summary along with my talking points in this video. There's a ton of videos already on YouTube that do have summaries of this arc. I just want to get right into my thoughts because I already have a lot to talk about, so I don't want to make this video super long. Plus, if you're watching this, I assume it's because you're already into Berserk, you're already reading it, but just in case you haven't, if in case you've never read it and you want to, I will have a short little spoiler-free section at the beginning of my thoughts just to kind of go over some basic stuff without getting into too much detail yet. So let's start this little non-spoiler section and, some just initial thoughts on the manga. So going into Berserk, I was hopeful, yet at the same time, I was a little guarded. Normally, these kind of darker, grimdark styles of storytelling are not really for me. It's just not my preference. I don't think that there's anything wrong with them necessarily. A lot of people do love grimdark. It's not for me usually. I typically consume stories to escape from life. So going into a fictional world that's even darker and worse than ours at times is it's not what I want usually. It's not always what I'm looking for. So that is why I find myself a little bit guarded going into Berserk. Yet at the same time, I've heard so many good things about this series that I wanted to at least give it a try. And though I know that initially Berserk may not seem to be kind of my style, I am trying to stay optimistic about it. So I'm not going into this with a bad attitude, like I'm gonna hate this. I'm trying here. I am trying. Something in general that I have found with my experience of manga is that the first volume, or even the first couple sometimes, just don't draw me in usually. Like they don't get me to care about the story right away. And I oftentimes don't even find the first volume to be that well done. It's understandable that at this point, this creator is still kind of finding their footing with the story, with the characters, with the medium sometimes, if this is their first manga. And I know that they'll probably improve over time. They'll improve in their storytelling and in their art. And my experience with Berserk has so far proved to be in line with that. But as with all other manga, I am going to give it a chance. I'm not just stopping since I'm not completely pulled in yet. I'm going to keep going. And I'll keep going until the point where I either have no interest at all anymore or I am completely sucked into the story. So with all that being said, that's all my kind of initial thoughts going into the manga. My quick little review so far, non-spoiler, of the Black Swordsman arc and the beginning of Berserk is that I think the strongest part of this manga so far is the style, the art style, the storytelling style. It's very distinct already. It's a thing all of its own. So to me, Berserk feels so far very distinct and very notable, especially since what I have been consuming so far for a while, the near past, has been a lot of shonen and shoujo. So this one is completely different. And I like that. But the shock value kind of style of storytelling here and the art style and a sort of unpleasant main character are not really to my taste at this point. And all those things have made Berserk kind of a challenging read for me. However, I will say by the end of this arc, I was pretty pulled into the story. Like this arc leading into the next one, I got pulled in a little bit. There was some good setup for things to come that I am intrigued by, and it makes me want to keep reading. So I always think that's a positive. No matter what I think of the first arc in a manga series, I am at least impressed when they get me to want to keep going. And it's all due to the talent of the storytelling rather than just people saying, it's so good, it gets better. Like the story itself kind of makes me want to keep going. And I think that's great. But at the same time, the love that people do have for Berserk, like the passion that people feel for it, does also make me want to keep going. So it's the combination of the two things, and I'm glad for that. So I am definitely going to continue. It's just that, like I said, I'm still a little guarded about the series, so I'm cautious, yet I am a little bit hopeful. Okay, so from here on out, we're going to get into completely spoiler talk. If you want to read Berserk and you don't want anything spoiled for you, don't watch from this point forward, because I'm not holding back. Okay, so now then, let's first of all talk about the infamous first panel of Berserk. We all know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to show it, and I'm not going to speak it in words. I think we all know what it is. I'm of two minds about it, because did I think I was a little like, ooh, edgy, like shock value, like I was saying before? Yes, I do definitely think it was that. But at the same time, did it set the atmosphere and the tone of Berserk well? Also kind of yes. So I kind of rolled my eyes at it, but I was also like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, it's definitely memorable, if nothing else. And then beyond that first panel, it got pretty violent pretty quickly. So again, just setting up expectations well. On the plot specifically, I will say I wasn't super impressed with the first volume. Like I mentioned before, most of the time in the first volume, I was just thinking, why should I care? I don't really care about anything that's going on. Is it kind of cool? I guess, but I don't have the proper context or setup that I really need to care about anything. So yeah, even the second volume, I still didn't love. I definitely liked it a little bit better than the first volume, because we got a little more insight into the world and a little more insight into Guts, but still, like, I wasn't that drawn in. I would say that the third volume is when I finally kind of started becoming invested and engaged with the story. The whole climax with the Count, who was, I hated him. I hated that guy. But the whole climax with his character, it was all really tense and engaging, especially when the little behelit, the little egg thing with the faces. So yeah, especially when that thing gets activated and then everyone gets sent to this like staircase dimension. That was a good part. I liked that part. But then the God Hand appears, and then we really get to see some kind of big concepts in the world building and the antagonists. And we see that Guts immediately has a reaction to one. He screams Griffith at it. And so I can tell that there's some sort of history there, or relationship that's kind of intriguing, because the thing is just like, I don't know you, I don't care about you. So, questions raised. It's an interesting dynamic that I want to explore. So now I want the answers. I want to see the story play out. I want to know more about the world. I want to understand who the God Hand is. God Hand are. Whatever's the correct grammar there. So yeah, while the plot maybe didn't start out super strong, I think it definitely kind of found its way towards the end of this arc. And I am excited to get to the next arc, the Golden Age. So now I want to get into the characters a little bit. I'm only talking about Guts and Puck. No one else, because I don't really care about anyone else at this point. So I want to just talk a little bit more about each of them, mostly Guts. So Guts, I'm not sure how I feel about him yet. I like that he has really strong characterization. Like right away, he's just pretty prickly. He's a very violent man. He doesn't care about just cutting someone in half. And he also doesn't really seem to care about other people. One of the things he says is basically that if you're weak and you get caught in the crossfire between stronger people, you deserve it, and he's not going to feel any sympathy for you. And in some ways, I can appreciate this characterization, because the mangaka really goes full tilt forward into making him a very morally gray character, especially since he is the protagonist. Like, he's not an anti-hero side character. He's not the antagonist. Like, this is our main character protagonist of the story. To make him that gray right out the gate is you know, it's a strong choice, and I can appreciate that. Guts has his convictions. He shows his flaws right out of the gate, which is good. I feel it's like a lot of writers are too scared, first of all, to give their characters, much less their main characters, any flaws. And second of all, to show them and show their hand at the flaws right away. And so I can really appreciate that in the writing craft. So I like that Guts is at least a flawed character, because then there's somewhere to go from there. There's an arc to be had. So props to Miura for that. It helps me also when a character is flawed and kind of a sort of an underdog character. Like obviously Guts has a lot of skill, but he's got a lot in the emotional damage, clearly a department to work with. It helps me to connect with the character then and want to watch them grow and want to see the character arc and how it's going to progress. And it also generates some interest in this character and the story. How is Guts going to interact with the story? How is the story going to interact with Guts? I'm kind of curious. But at the same time, all that being said, these things also sort of make Guts not super likable. So like I said, I'm glad of the strong characterization. I'm glad that we're seeing a lot of him as a person, as a character, but I'm nervous about having to follow him for an entire story. I don't know that I'm gonna like someone who's like kind of a little bit of a dick to most people. I am guessing that the unlikability factor is kind of intentional, or maybe it's fully intentional. But even still with that, I'm still not sure that I'm going to like following him for the rest of the series. I don't know. It's early to tell yet, but you know, it is a concern I have. I am trying to reserve judgment though. These are just some initial thoughts I have about him. I can either see myself really, really liking him in the future or just absolutely hating him. I don't know that he's going to be a character where I feel in between. Like, I don't think I'm going to feel ambivalent about him as the story progresses. I'm going to go one of those two ways, and I'm interested to see which side of the spectrum I'm going to fall on. So moving on from Guts now, I just want to talk a little bit about Puck. I don't have a lot to say, but since Puck is the character I feel like is in the story the second most after Guts, I do just have a couple things I want to say. So again, just like with Guts, I am not sure how I currently feel about Puck, and I'm also not sure how I'm going to feel about Puck going forward in the story. I am not sure if he's going to end up being really freaking annoying, or if he's going to end up being just this nice light presence that you just feel some relief whenever he's on the page and in the story. Again, I think it's going to go either one of those two extremes, and I'm not sure. It's just an interesting kind of observation. We have both Guts, who's like super dark and hardcore, and then Puck, who's like super light and silly. So it's an interesting dynamic, that's for sure. I'm excited to see how my feelings towards these characters develop. Okay, so moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the art style, and this is another one of my kind of concerns. I mentioned before how I like that it's a very distinct art style, like it's very Berserk. I can already tell like this is Berserk. It's very recognizable, but at the same time, the art style is a little gruesome. Like it's just got a gruesome theme to it. It's kind of ugly. Again, I understand this is more or less on purpose, but yet again, I'm guarded about it because, like I've said about the characters and the plot and the tone, is this something that I want to be staring at for a long time yet to come as I read through the series? Again, I'm not sure the theme of this video. It might grow on me, but I just don't know. I'm not sure. It does seem to fit the tone of the story well, though. So, you know, at least there's that, no matter what I think. It fits. And I want to clarify, when I say ugly, I said the art style was kind of ugly before. I don't mean that there's no skill of the artist, of the mangaka. I don't think it's ugly on a technical level. Like there's nothing wrong with it. The art is obviously very clear. It's detailed. It's consistent. There are some just amazingly jaw-dropping panels. I'm more talking about the style of it, which is just that the people, the surroundings, the settings, they look a little grisly. They look a little shocking. They look a little grotesque, that kind of thing. So yeah, the art style, I don't know, we'll see. Unsureness. And just some last kind of other thoughts. The world building, just the whole world of this story is horrifying. I feel like I'm on edge with every turn of the page. I'm always just waiting for the next horrifying thing to happen. Some of that is the mangaka, who does a great job, you know, for better or worse, of putting me on edge. But some of that is just me kind of not liking this genre so much. I don't love the grim dark things, and I'm not used to them either because I know I don't like them. I don't usually read them unless something comes super highly recommended like Berserk. So yeah, this all just goes back to my theme again, unsureness. Going forward, I do think this was a pretty solid first arc. There's a lot to be impressed by, but like I said, I just have some concerns going forward, as I kind of mentioned throughout the video. So I am going to keep going, like I said. That's for sure. I wonder, is this like a common thing that people say? Like, we start out and we're not in love with the first arc, but then it gets better? I don't know. Maybe someone can let me know. Got a lot of feelings about the story and I just don't know how to process some of them. Anyways, I think that's all I wanted to say about this first arc. If you have read Berserk, if you've read the Black Swordsman arc, I would love to know what you think of it. What are your thoughts? How did you feel when you started this story? Let me know. So I guess otherwise, just have a really great day or morning or night, wherever you are. Farewell.